Welcome to Virtualize Everything. Today's episode is going to be about CasaOS. So let's start out by looking at my desktop and let's go over to this video. And this is where the story really starts, this video by DB Tech. Right here where the progress bar is where I stopped. Not because the video was bad, not because I just didn't want to listen to him, nothing. But because this video isn't really about CasaOS. It's about using CasaOS with Cloudflare tunnels. And Cloudflare tunnels are a great tool. Despite what some of you might thought when we were doing our speed testing video, I like Cloudflare tunnels. I like the availability it gives most people, and I do generally understand the restriction of my ISP is not that from Cloudflare tunnels at all. But with that being said, I didn't know what CasaOS was. I didn't know what he was talking about, and I didn't want to invest the time to try to understand that from a video that wasn't really about CasaOS. So I stopped. So I eventually made my way to the GitHub and started looking through it. And now OS in my world is operating system. So I think of something like Debian, Mac, Windows, etc. And this is what I find. This line right here. This means it's built on top of another OS. And as we scroll down through, or somewhere here, I find a compatibility list. Right here. Debian, Ubuntu server, Raspberry Pi OS, ARM support, and even here, Raspberry Pi OS. This runs on pretty low-end hardware, and it's kind of cool. So I was very interested by this point, and I also noticed this up here. CasaOS is a simple, easy-to-use, elegant, open-source personal cloud software. So as I kind of dove into this a little bit more, I realized it's basically a way of running Docker containers. And in here, somewhere, it says that they run over 100,000 different apps from the Docker ecosystem. Interested. As you know, I'm found Proxmox this way. I'm always looking for new ways. So here is CasaOS. This is my panel that's actually running from my Proxmox server here. And you can see we have Pi-hole and Nextcloud. And if I click here, so let's go ahead and look at how I got this running actually on my Proxmox server. And I even got this running inside of a Ubuntu container. That's right, this runs inside of a container. We don't even have to run it on a VM. So with that, let's head over to our Proxmox server, and just for good interaction, let's refresh it so I can log. Okay, so we're here at the Proxmox web interface for my initial server. This is a server you've been seeing for a while, and although I should be being a good boy and moving over to the R710, I really don't like the power consumption and noise it makes, even though it is becoming more and more necessary for some of these videos and some of the things that I've been playing around lately. But now we're going to go ahead and create a CT. So the first thing we need is an image, and we actually have our image. But if you don't know how to get your image, you're going to go up here to template. You're going to search for what you want. In our case, it's going to be Ubuntu, and this will give you all of the different Ubuntu distribution. 22.04 is the latest LTS release at the time of making this video, and 23.04 just came out. So we're going to use 22.04. So if you don't have it, click download and it'll show up here just like mine is. So now that we have our image, we're able to come to the top right hand corner of the screen and click create CT. And then we're going to need to give it a name and a password. Now we hit next. And we're going to select our image, which we said was going to be 22.04. Hit next. And I suggest upping this. I gave mine last time 30 gigs. Now, if you're going to be doing things like Nextcloud and whatnot, you may want to give it more because it's going to need plenty of space to store that on. That being said, containers are really easy to add containers are really easy to add storage space to later on if you need to. So we'll hit next. I'm going to give it 2 cores and 2 gigs of RAM. Now I'm going to hit next, and really probably should do this as static. So we're going to enter an IP address. Now you notice it stays red, and I know I mention this in every video for those of you, but if you're coming here new and you haven't created a container, this can be a real trip up. So we're going to need to put slash and a subnet mask, which in most cases is going to be 24, and then fill in our gateway. And in my setup, I also need to change the bridge. This most likely won't be the case for you unless you have multiple networks set up on your server. My server, or rather my router, is set up to have a separate VLAN for Proxmox and containers and whatnot, so I need to select that. Now I'm going to hit next, and I'm going to hit next because we'll use our host DNS settings, and I'm going to hit finish. Now I can exit out, and we can go over here to our Casa container, and we can go to options and click start at boot. Hit edit, check the box, and press OK. What this is going to do is this is going to make Casa start up. So if we have any power failures or reboots due to maintenance or whatnot, Casa is going to start automatically. Now if you're hosting things like your Nextcloud server, Pi-hole, Jellyfin, and etc. inside of Casa, you're going to want this to happen because you're going to want these containers to come up and be active immediately. So now we're going to hit start, and we're going to open our console. So with our console open, we're going to log in with root and the password that we set up at the beginning. Now the first thing I always do is run an apt update and an apt upgrade -y. So now that we've updated and installed all of the software components that come by default with Ubuntu, we're going to want to head back and head over to our GitHub repository, the one that is where all of the CasaOS stuff is hosted. And remember, I told you there was a single line, download a script and execute the script to install CasaOS. So we'll scroll down here, and we're definitely using an officially supported OS Ubuntu server. It is a little bit newer of a version, but that's okay. Or most of the time okay. So we're just going to grab this script right here. Now, we could use this one, but we don't have curl installed by default in a container. So let's use wget, and we're just going to copy it. Now we're going to bring our container back up, and we'll paste it, and we'll hit enter. This will install CasaOS on your server, or in our case, on your container. Okay, so CasaOS is now installed and ready to be used. So we know that we set our IP address up initially as static, but just say we forgot it. We can run the command IP address, and we can find out that our IP address is 192.168.392. Now we do know that we set it up as static, and we can actually look at it inside of the Proxmox web interface under networking right here. But it's always good to know the command to do this as well. Now we can open another tab, and we can paste our IP address in here, and this is going to open up CasaOS. Now it's going to welcome us, and we can hit go, and this screen's going to ask us to create an account. So now that we've entered our username and our new password that we want to use twice, we can hit create. And this is asking us if we want to see the news feed about the Casa blog. This is up to you, but it can give us some information about where Casa is going in the project and maybe some new features, so it could be fun to read. So I'm going to accept it. Now here's CasaOS in our web interface, and it gives us a little bit of information about our storage drive, our CPU usage, and our RAM usage, and our network activity. Well, how do we do with it now? Well, we can click here at the App Store, and at a click of a button, we can install Nextcloud. We can install Pi-hole. We do want to take note that the default Pi-hole password is CasaOS. It's good to know this. We could even install Jellyfin, Home Assistant, Unify Controller if you like Ubiquiti gear, Transmission, Uptime Kuma, and quite a bit of other stuff here. Even a speed testing server. NGINX proxy manager. But then we also have this custom install button up here. And this will actually allow us to install Docker images. We can configure their IP address, their port number, what the default homepage address is, an icon for them, and their name. along with device and environment availabilities, their privilege status, their CPU availability, and their reset policies. All right from a simple to use web interface. So Nextcloud's still downloading, but we have Pi-hole right here. So we just click on it and it opens up. Remember, we said the password by default was CasaOS. So we're just going to enter it and hit login. There you have it. We're all logged in and we can start configuring Pi-hole and doing what we need with it to continue. So we can close this out and we see that Nextcloud finished. So we could click on that just like we did Pi-hole. And it asks us to do a little bit more install for Nextcloud. So let's go ahead and do that so we can check out the performance of this. So just for the sake of everything, I'm going to skip this. But you may want to install some of these other apps. They're definitely a great features to expand upon Nextcloud themselves. But I'm going to skip it. And you may remember this. This is the welcome screen to Nextcloud. Let's first go ahead and go to administrating settings, and we see that we're on 26.01. All right, so I hope you enjoyed our little tour of CasaOS today, and it's inspired you to play around with it more. I know I've been inspired to play around with it more, and I definitely want to check it out and see what it has to offer. I think as far as at least my general household stuff, it may have a lot to offer as far as a really easy to use interface and the general ability just to work without having to have a lot of fuss. I know, at least with myself and my wife here at the house, I need things that work when they're deployed for the entire house. Now here in my lab, well, I think Proxmox and some of the other stuff is fun. I will be testing Casa for a while here in the lab before I move it out to the house. And generally the house here, if you've heard some of my videos I've talked about, needs some more upgrades, which will be coming in future videos. But with that, we're going to end this video off and say goodnight. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And drop a comment below if you use Casa, if you like Casa, if you don't like Casa, or if you have a video you would like us to cover, or maybe even a topic. Have a good night.